Welcome to Resistance Chronicle. I'm Matt.
I'm Eric.
And today we got into cigars with Mr. Jonathan Barbeau. It's a French-Canadian name, just in case you were wondering. And it was a fun conversation. We learned a lot about how the government's fucking the cigar industry.
Because he's the manager of the local cigar shop in our town.
The guy has been a friend of mine for a little bit, and I've never met anybody that knows so much about everything. He's got the gift of gab, and we get into that in the show. It was a good show. Tune in.
We're definitely going to try to get him on again.
We'll link his contact information. He's an incredible DJ. He does a lot of mashups. And we want to get him back on again and talk about like the anatomy of a cigar and what makes up a cigar, because we got into that when we weren't recording, and we were wishing that we were friggin' recording this because it was a hell of a good conversation. But anyway, tune into what we got here, and we're going to bring him back.
But I did learn that you're actually better off smoking a cigar a day or two. You're actually more healthy than if you're a non-smoker.
Stress.
Enjoy our awesome intro.
It's not a political statement. It's a patriotic duty.
And the editors of great newspapers, such as yours, owe a common obligation to the people.
But freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream.
What are you people? On dope?
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
But we have some bad hombres here, and we're going to get them out.
We're recording here.
You are recording?
We are recording. Video, not here yet though. Hold on.
We'll do that in a second.
We'll do that in a second. All right, now we're recording. Welcome to the Resistance Chronicle. We got a good show going on today. I am sitting here with a cutting board, some cured pork, Eric, and the most interesting man that I've ever met in my life, Mr. Jonathan, and you got to pronounce your last name for me because I've known you for a couple of years now. How long has it been? Like 4 years or something?
Yeah, at least 4 years.
And I don't know how to pronounce your last name.
Barbeau.
Barbeau.
French-Canadian, yeah, Barbeau.
Excellent. All right, we won't hold the French-Canadian against you.
Don't Google me.
And I'm going to be cutting into this pork here so we can try some slices of it, because it came out friggin' delicious, and this is all part of my homesteading act of 2021.
It looks very phallic.
Oh, smell it.
You even brought your own knife too, huh?
Yeah, man. Smell it.
There's just something really awesome
That's
about
the garlic.
two podcast guys just passing around a phallic piece of dried meat.
Pork?
Oh yeah, that smells
pork.
good.
Delicious. All right, we're going to cut into this and try some samples. So, we're here today with Mr. Jonathan Barbeau. He is the manager of Two Guys Smoke Shop here in Salem, New Hampshire, right?
Yeah.
Our hometown. He runs the podcast studio upstairs, Studio 21. And a big chunk of what we talk about here on the Resistance Chronicle is kind of how the government fucks us and what we can do to get around it. And the one thing that I know for certain is that the government fucks the cigar industry.
It certainly does.
And they lump it in with tobacco, and I was hoping that you could get into all of that from beginning to end and share your friggin' vast wealth of knowledge with us.
Yeah, hopefully I don't lose my place. I have no notes. I'm just
That's
operating without a
okay.
net.
We don't do anything. We don't do anything with notes. As I sit here with a knife in my hand, don't fuck up.
All right. I'm not scared yet. Yeah, the thing that I find the most interesting about how the U.S. government goes after tobacco is, for starters, they attempt to lump all tobacco in together. So a study done by the National Cancer Institute called Monograph Number 9 lays out and separates out all of the major tobacco styles. So you have cigars, you have pipes, you have chewing tobacco, you have cigarettes. And it, in the final findings of it, it separates out cigars from what they call OTP, which is all the other tobacco products, cigarettes, vape, etc. And what ends up happening is if you smoke 1 to 2 cigars a day, you will outlive a non-smoker by an average of 4 years. You are less likely to get COPD, you are less likely to get lung cancer, and you are less likely to get coronary heart disease than a non-smoker.
One to 2 cigars a day.
Per day.
So it's actually healthy for you.
Yeah, when they put the warnings and they say cigars are not a safe alternative to cigarettes, cigars are a safe alternative to not smoking is really what the data shows. So what happens is you end up with your Ways and Means Committee of, say, your state, and they sit down and they meet with data analysts, and they try to, God damn it, there's a friggin' word for economists. They don't meet with doctors, they meet with economists, and the economist's job is to figure out how much they can tax a certain bracket without the risk of doing irreparable harm to the revenue stream of the state. And what they typically, the number one play is this sin tax, and I'm putting that in quotes. And
Like
that's
sin, like SIN?
correct.
Right.
So we have separation of church and state, except if you're using tobacco, in which case you pay a tax because you're a sinner. But I digress. So the Ways and Means Committee sits down and they look to see how they can impact the revenue, how much they can tax all tobacco and not affect the revenue, in fact, increase the revenue for the state. And they never really look at the data for all of the different tobacco products. Now, if you wanted to make an argument about, okay, we're gonna sin tax you because this causes an unnecessary strain on the government because people that smoke cigarettes, by and large, come down with lung cancer. So, okay, you're gonna be an unnecessary drain to society if you smoke cigarettes, therefore, every cigarette gets X amount of percent tax on it. It would make sense. But when it comes to cigars, the FDA, when they took over in 2016, their own studies, they did 3 in a row that year, all of their studies proved that if you smoked 1 to 2 cigars a day, you were better off than a non-smoker. And yet they still went ahead and they offered the guidance that they were to have the authority and jurisdiction over all tobacco products, including cigars.
Now, when you say it's almost better for you to smoke a cigar a day, what benefits does it give you as opposed to not smoking a cigar every day?
Well, think about the number one killer in the United States. It's stress.
Yep.
When you smoke a cigar, and you see it all the time, Matt. In fact, sometimes I see you in the shop. Matt will come in from a rough day at work. His shoulders are up. He's not really saying much. He's got that kind of bitchy resting face going on.
That's almost every day, though.
Correct.
Yeah.
But he gets his cigar and he goes and sits in the chair.
I do that so people don't talk to me.
That's true. I wait about 20 minutes until I see his body language change. He starts to slouch in his chair a little bit. He starts to relax a bit. And I walk back. And the same guy, and listen, I consider Matt my friend. He'll talk to me almost anytime he comes in. But on the times that he seems the most stressful, he's not all that chatty. 20 minutes into his cigar, I can go down and have a full-on conversation and he's come alive again. So I'm going to say, yeah.
Do you notice that too?
I had one today and I'm pretty happy right now.
Yeah?
I love them. You know, I like to sit back with a cigar. I prefer to be at home when I do it, you know, but, you know, weather permitting, thank God the shop is there because I have that in the winter time. And it's an unload for me, man.
Yeah.
You know, at home I'll sit on the back porch, I'll pour myself a scotch, a whiskey, you know, whatever I got in the cupboard, a beer, and my kids come out and they hang out. I don't care if they're around the smoke that's blowing around. There was an article I read a while ago that was written by Dave. So Dave Garofalo, right?
Yeah.
That's his last
Garofalo,
name.
yeah.
Garofalo is the owner of Two Guys Smoke Shop, and he's like a guru in the cigar industry from what I see. And he mentioned in this article that there's more nicotine in an eggplant than there is in a cigar.
Yeah, you're hovering in, so tomatoes, eggplants, and tobacco are all part of the same family of plant, and they all have nicotine in them.
Yeah.
So tomato, you're hovering between 5 and 7% nicotine, and when you get to eggplant, you're at like 9%.
Okay.
So he makes the argument
Wow.
that eggplant parmesan you could become addicted to, and he'll usually point at his own stomach and say, I give you exhibit A. So, you're... When the FDA went after tobacco for import taxation, user fees they call it, the vape industry got smart and they said, what if we source the nicotine from something other than tobacco? Because they knew eggplant was a better option anyways, and it's easier to farm than tobacco, so they could get a higher yield out of it nicotine-wise. And the FDA then changed their language and said that they were going to be in control of all nicotine delivery systems. So again, I say to you, if tobacco is the smoking gun, why then is the FDA go from being in control of all tobacco products to being in control of all nicotine delivery systems?
And nicotine delivery system being cigar, cigarette, vape,
anything that has nicotine in it, yeah.
Whatever it is, but not an eggplant.
Not an eggplant because...
No, but if you extract the nicotine from the eggplant and use it in your vape product,
correct.
And that vape product goes into a vape pen,
yep.
Then that's the and they do it all for the money.
Exactly.
And they just keep growing and growing and growing.
And they gotta get their hands on everything.
Yeah, every fucking thing. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Unreal. So what do you guys do? Because Two Guys is like the biggest cigar shop in like the nation, isn't it?
Two Guys Smoke Shop Salem is the highest independently owned brick and mortar retail shop in the world.
And they have a website, and we're gonna link it because we want our listeners to buy cigars from Two Guys because you can buy them online and they ship them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
What do you guys do at Two Guys to try and combat this or to deal with it or what?
So there's a couple of things that happen at the state level. We are part of the CANH, the Cigar Association of New Hampshire, and through that, and along with all of the other major cigar shops, about 6 of them in the state, we all raise money to hire a lobbyist to look out for all this bullshit on the state level. So the lobbyist will comb through any legislation that has to do with cigars, and you're hiring a lobbyist for a reason. We're playing the game just like everybody else is. So the lobbyist is buddies with everybody, and he says, listen, you scratched my back years ago, it's time for me to scratch yours type of thing, or vice versa. So if they're planning on putting something in tobacco related, he usually knows in advance, and they meet once a month, the organization. And so at the state level, we work very hard to keep taxation out of cigars specifically. There's other tobacco products that are taxed. 68% by the way, but cigars, because New Hampshire is the only state in the country with legal separation between cigars and OTP, other tobacco products. We're the only state in the union that has that legal definition, which is, I'm going to fudge this, but 6 pounds per thousand, and it must be held in a humidor in order to be properly smokable. So it must be 100% whole leaf tobacco. So you can't have a swisher with a wooden tip. You can't have homogenized tobacco paper as a binder. And some of that stuff, you could make the argument, well, that's a cigar. Swisher is a cigar. Barely. But really, by legal definition, it isn't. And that's how you can separate something like a Padron, which you like, Matt, versus a swisher with a wooden tip on it.
Yeah, and basically anything that you can't break open to fill with products that aren't exactly legal in New Hampshire is...
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. So
what was that? So any other?
So if
like Philly Blunt,
like a Philly Blunt or Garcia Vega, that's not covered under it. Just premium cigars.
Yeah, those are rolled in a way that the tobacco is actually meant to be dumped out.
And that's a tax 68%.
That's 68%.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're not saying that you shouldn't smoke El Producto. They're hoping you do buy El Producto, put your weed in it, because they're going to make 68% on that purchase versus buying a premium cigar where they make nothing. Now, the argument to the Ways and Means Committee is that unlike other tobacco products, cigars are not addictive. So in the wintertime, my business cuts in half, period. No one has ever stood, we're across from T-Bones in Salem, no one's ever stood outside of T-Bones because they needed a quick cigar after dinner. They just don't need it.
Yeah. My dog just ripped ass again.
Yeah, he does this at least 3 times a podcast.
It's perfect.
This is the first podcast we're calling him out on it.
Yeah. I couldn't concentrate. So
I was honestly afraid it was me.
No, definitely wasn't you. So
you were saying nobody's gonna come and stand at T-Bones for a cigar.
Yeah, they're not leaving halfway through the dinner because their nicotine levels are low and they've got to give it a boost, because on a cigar you're looking at 1 to 3% compared to eggplant that's at close to 9%.
Now, what's a cigarette at?
A cigarette, they are juiced up, so you're 30, 40, 50%.
Oh, okay.
They are just, and then your vape liquid, your e-liquids, you can buy at different percentage levels, so you can get those down to a manageable level where it's less addicting.
Yeah, mine's like 3 or 6 or something like that.
Interesting. So that at the state level, you got CANH,
Correct.
the Cigar Association. Now there's CRN. What's that?
The CRA is the
CRA, okay.
Cigar Rights of America, and then there's also recently formed Cigar Rights of the World, which the world's first NFT cigar, the proceeds for that cigar is going to fund the Cigar Rights of the World.
So one thing I noticed about Two Guys since I've been shopping there, and it's always been like kind of like a mystique thing in the cigar industry, is the Cuban cigar. Everyone's got to get the Cohiba. Everybody's got to get the Monte Cristo. What's up with that? Because you guys don't care for the Cubans. Dave's been to Cuba.
I've been to Cuba.
You've been to Cuba. Okay, tell us about that experience.
So, best experience I've ever been on in my entire life.
I was imagine.
An invited guest of Habanos, which is the governing body of the tobacco industry, or was. It's now owned by Communist China. And Cuba's communist to begin with.
It's owned by Communist China, really?
The cigar side, yeah.
So, from what I understand, is like if you cross over the border into Canada and you want to buy a Cuban cigar, you can only buy them at Habanos shops, right?
In Canada, they're readily available.
Oh, are they? Okay.
You
You don't have
still
to worry about fakes like you do in like the Dominican or something like that?
Well, I would say if you're getting fake, you're getting a better product in most cases.
Really?
Because think about it, if you're in the Dominican Republic where it's illegal as a country for them to import rolled cigars. In fact, only in their duty-free area can you buy Dominican cigars that have been shipped to the United States, to the parent company of those brands, and then shipped back to the Dominican Republic. You pay $6 to $8 more for a cigar in the Dominican Republic that was made in the Dominican than you would for that same product in the United States.
Wow.
So,
go ahead.
if you buy a Cuban cigar in the Dominican Republic, you are buying a Dominican cigar. There is no question. You're probably getting something pretty decent.
Yeah.
You're going to pay $6 to $7 for it, and it's worth about $6 or $7 if you were to buy that exact same. If you could figure out what that cigar was in the United States, it's not a complete ripoff. Mm-hmm. You're helping the guy that's making cigars on the beach, or he's buying them from the back door of a factory and selling them. So, yeah, you are helping the local economy. It's not the end of the world. But that cigar is what keeps Cuban cigars alive in the American mindset, because they are good.
So you're not getting like rat hair swept up
No,
off the floor or something like that? Okay. So I've heard some weird stories.
Yeah, you're mostly getting
on the internet.
You're mostly getting a decent cigar that the kid paid $1 for, and you could knock them down usually to about $5 a stick if you're really good. So he makes $4 profit on you, and whatever, you're helping the local economy. In Cuba, everybody said to me, when you go, be careful of the fakes. Mm-hmm. Now keep in mind what I said. You cannot import rolled cigars into a third world country that makes cigars.
Okay.
There are no fakes in Cuba. The rollers will steal tobacco, or if they're allowed to take a cigar home, they'll stockpile them at home instead of consuming them. They'll sell them to tourists to make their little side hustle. Mm-hmm. So you can get almost anything you want for about $3 a cigar in Cuba. American. I came home with nothing except what was given to me at the Habanos Festival, and because the cigars were terrible. They're even the ones I got on the street. I must have smoked 50 cigars while I was there, and nothing was worth the $3.
Yeah. So how did you get to Cuba? Tell us about that, because I interrupted you like I usually do on the show with Eric.
I was an invited guest because of the Cigar Authority Podcast. We're in our 12th year, and Dave had gone and essentially wrote this expose piece on what is going on in Cuba as far as their cigars, what is going on. They're not really draw testing, they're not fermenting the tobacco long enough, that they leave the flowers on the plant so the leaves are kind of grow sort of midgeted, if that's a word. So he somehow ends up getting invited back a second time, and on his third trip, I won a contest or whatever. For every box of somebody's cigar you sold, you got a chance to win, and I won. I just luck of the draw, and so I ended up going to Cuba and as an invited guest of Habanos.
Okay. And
that's the only way you could go, because you can't spend, even then with President Obama's, he just eased the travel restrictions. You still couldn't go and spend money for the Cuban government because they make money on everything. So you either stay in a private Airbnb, you can buy cigars from on the street, but you really weren't supposed to buy them in the store, except somehow that exception got made that you could take up to $800 worth of cigars and rum back.
Yeah.
From Cuba.
Okay.
That part confused me because the law was clearly stating that it was still trading with the enemy, but there was an exemption written in about cigars.
And I know when he first did that and he signed that act in, if you went to Canada or you went to another country, it was like $100 worth of Cuban cigars that you could bring back with you. I had someone try and smuggle me back some Cuban cigars from Canada, and they caught him at the border. And Border Patrol. Yeah, it was like $85 worth of cohibas. And, yeah, so the poor guy didn't get his money from me because I said, "How do I know you even got him?"
Yeah, during that time, you were supposedly able to travel with Cuban cigars, but I don't know if you guys are older. Well, you've seen the movie Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
All right, so that movie is about moving Coors beer from one side of the country or one side of the Mississippi to the other side. And back then, you were the cool kid if you drove from here 6 hours and you bought Coors beer and filled up your trunk and you brought it back and you got a fridge filled with Coors beer. You're the fucking man. Now, I notice you guys aren't drinking Coors beer. We're recording the podcast because Coors beer sucks. It sucked back then.
Even when the mountains are blue, it sucks.
Yeah, it sucked back then and it sucks now. No one's driving 6 minutes, let alone 6 hours, to go get a trunk full of Coors beer. But because Americans were told they couldn't have it, it was the best beer. That's the whole thing about Cuban cigars. You tell an American, you can't have this because there's an embargo. When the embargo was signed by, and I'm being as random as you guys are on the podcast, when the Kennedy signed the embargo in 1962, Cuba was stuck in 1952 agriculturally. They've made zero advancements since then because they don't have internet. Very, 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 there's about, and I'm not exaggerating this, and we can go into this conspiracy theory another time. I believe that there's about 100 people that control the government of Cuba. They all have a specific plate on their car, and if the Cuban government hears me say this, they're not going to let me leave the country again. But
it kind of reminds me of something around here. You see all of our state representatives with special state plates on. I see certain ones come into the shop, and I see those special New Hampshire plates sitting in the driveway. It's like, what the hell?
So I have no idea where my point was.
That's all right. We do that all the time here. But you've been to Cuba, and you got to experience all that. Where else have you been?
Been in Nicaragua. That was probably the best trip I've ever been on in my entire life.
I bet that's where the Padrones come from, right?
Padrones, yeah. I toured Nick Perdomo's facility, and it is, and not to take anything away from Padron. I know you love Padron, as do I. Nick's facility is state of the art. Sorting seeds by weight, putting them under a microscope and seeing if there's dimples in the seed. So that you get proper germination. His germination level is 96%, which is unheard of in agriculture. It's just, that's where I was going. Agriculture. Nice.
All right, we're back.
So Cuba was stuck back in 1952. They've made zero advancements since 1952 to now. Every other country, because they have access to the United States and the agricultural improvements that we've made, you've got companies like Bear Systems going into Honduras and working with the Aroa family and being able to grow a Cameroon seed, which is a Sumatra seed that's been grown in Cameroon for more than 7 cycles. So then you get to name it. So it becomes Cameroon. It's got a sweet taste to it. They duplicate the soil from Cameroon, Africa, in Honduras through Bear Systems, flying a drone over, infrared scanning the fields, and then putting the nutrients in the quadrants where they need to go, based on this computer program from Bear Systems. Cuba doesn't even pick the flower off the plant because they didn't do that in 1952. And every other country picks it off because now you shock the plant and the leaves get bigger. The bigger the leaves, the bigger the cigars you can make. We're in a ring gauge boom right now. It's the race to the 100 ring gauge, for regular production. So the fact that somebody would actively seek out a cigar that is made so poorly in a country that is stuck in 1952. If you knew what you were talking about cigars, you would never, ever even want to smoke a Cuban cigar, let alone, if you smoked it, think that it's at all remotely good.
I smoked one in Canada and was like, man, this ain't that great. I mean, I didn't know much, but I was like, I expected it to be like the best thing that's ever
like
tasted.
oh my god, yeah. I've smoked a bunch of Cubans. I would buy them out of Switzerland, and there's a company called Cigar One. It's online. You can go there. You can put an order in. You pay with your credit card, and then you see on your credit card bill a little foreign tax or whatever it is for using your credit card in a foreign country. About 2 weeks after I order them, they get to my door. They're sitting there. The mailman delivers them. Luckily, nothing happens through customs. Because of the long travel, I'll put them in my humidor for a couple of weeks to let them mellow out and sit and pull them out and smoke them. And I'll take a Padron 26 #1 all day long over any of these Cohibas that I bought or Romeo and Julietas, and you just I don't know. It's just something about them that I just don't think is.
Cuba doesn't freeze their cigars either. So what happens is on all leafy vegetables you have either larva that has laid eggs, you got bacterias, and the vast majority of the pests in cigar tobacco the shell can be cracked at minus 10 degrees Fahrenheit. So you go to Perdomo and he loads everything into these containers that are going to either go on a ship or go on a plane, and then attaches a giant air conditioner unit to the container and chills the inside of that container down to minus 10 for 3 days.
So that those larvae don't hatch.
So the egg cracks and the larva never hatches, and you never end up with a tobacco beetle.
Yep.
Cuba doesn't even draw test their cigars. They have draw testing machines there. There are 2 of them in the country. They have a layer of dust on them because they've never been used, and they're roped off with dusty velvet ropes.
Isn't it true too in Cuba that the people working in the factories, they hate the government so much that they purposely fuck up cigars?
There's 2 groups of rollers. There's the people that are part of this secret society, I guess is the best way to put it, and there's a secret signal. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that it's your left index finger touching your left eyebrow, and that's how you send the signal to everybody else that you're cool and you're on this group. During that rolling cycle, if the boss of that floor is part of this group, everybody on the floor knows that every other cigar, they're going to put a twist in the bunch before they pass the wrapper over it. So what that does is dramatically reduces airflow through the cigar.
And that's just to fuck with their government.
Yeah.
Because the people that hate their government, probably.
Well, you think about, especially now that there's a little tiny bit of internet that is starting to, you can buy internet cards. I was able to buy an internet card while I was there. And because Americans are so generous, they tip well. So a Cuban person that has a taxi cab, say, probably is going to make $100 a month. They can live like a king in that country for $100 a month. So they probably have internet. And if their regular job is cigar roller and their side hustle is the taxi cab, and they've got to give 67% of their revenue to the government as a tax on their side hustle, and they make their $22 a month, and on egg day they get eggs, and on bread day they get bread, when they see the price that the Cuban cigars fetch in countries like Canada and Switzerland, they understand that they are being just completely shit out of luck with the money.
$50 for like two Cohiba Robustos.
And that's
crazy.
Not only you're being overcharged, but that's an insane amount of money to a Cuban person. An insane amount, $50.
So how do the people in Nicaragua that say work for Padron's factory feel about him charging $40 for that 50-year anniversary?
Well, they're paid a fair, reasonable wage. It's 100% employment in Esteli, Nicaragua, where Padron is. So they have this life philosophy of if you would like to eat, you must work. Blind people work, people with one hand work, people who are deaf work, people who have no sense of smell, they work.
Wow, what a concept. Huh?
There's
You want to eat and
no,
work.
there's no not working, or you'll starve to death. And it seems harsh, you know, if you have somebody that is on one side of the aisle, the humanitarian in them may say, you know what, this is, it's just wrong that's how it is. But it's 100% of the people that work. They all go to work every day. It works. If you would like to eat and you have to work, that works. That is how you guarantee a healthy society, in my opinion.
So we went from Cuba, we went to Nicaragua, now let's get into America.
All right.
In America, isn't one of our biggest exports like Connecticut leaf wrappers?
Connecticut broadleaf is big. It's bought by the guys that make backwoods for the most part.
Okay.
So complete waste.
That's considered the 68% tax cigar there, right?
Yep.
The backwoods, yeah.
Yep. And then you have Connecticut Shade, which has fallen out of favorability and popularity only because it's so expensive.
Now, when you say shade, that means what? They put like some sort of like
Cheesecloth.
Cheesecloth, okay.
And it grows literally in the shade.
And that's what Fuente does with the Opus X, right?
Fuentes Opus X is a sun-grown wrapper.
Okay.
What makes that cigar different is that it's a Dominican Puro.
That thing hasn't been good in like 15 years.
Correct.
Yeah.
It wasn't. What was good about it and what caused the hype is that Dominican wrapper never burned. And Fuente discovered that if they aged that wrapper enough, they could get it to burn. And they made this big deal by releasing, this is another little marketing trick, they released Opus X on the East Coast, Diamond Crown on the West Coast. So Toro Fuente is distributed by the folks at J.C. Newman.
Yeah.
So J.C. Newman agreed they were going to release Diamond Crown on the West Coast, and Toro Fuente was going to release the Opus X on the East Coast. And so no shops had both. And whatever the line of demarcation was down the center of the country, that's what it was. And you had one or the other. So the other side ends up freaking out about this cigar, both of them. And this is where the hype of Opus X came from. It's the Coors beer model.
Yeah.
You can't have it, therefore you want it. And for the guys on the East Coast, it was like, oh, we have this. It's awesome. You guys in California suck a dick. You can't have it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Once you could have it, that's when people started saying, oh, it took a drop down. I've smoked original Opus, and 12 years after it was released, a buddy of mine, a lawyer, gave me a couple, and it was okay.
It was aged 12 years?
Aged for 12 years.
Okay.
It was okay.
Yeah.
It was not anything to write home about. It's not in my cigar journal as, oh my God, this was in the top 10. It's in the top 100. It was a good cigar, but it was not great.
Maybe the first time I had it, it was because it was a new thing to me, and it was like, I think it was like around Father's Day it came out, because it was only on the holidays.
Yeah,
it came out.
Father's Day, Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. So all right, so let me get back to this. We went to Cuba, we went to Nicaragua. Now we came into America, we learned that we export a lot of tobacco, as well as we import pretty much the finished product.
Right.
At what point, when it comes into America, does the man get their hands on it and say, okay, we're going to start taxing the crap out of it?
This happens in the 90s. There was a thing they call the Cigar Boom.
Yes.
And that happened around the same time as Cigar Aficionado coming out.
Coincidence?
I do give them credit for bringing to the American consumer's eye the flavor notes. You know, you're not just tasting smoke. You know, there's other stuff going on there. So being able to look at a cigar as a product to be enjoyed by connoisseurs, like wine, like whiskey, like beer. And so they did have a lot to do with that. When the boom ends up happening, right around the end of it, 96-ish, going into 97, the boom was starting to come to a close. Things had crested. And at this point, the government says, state of Massachusetts, for example, we think that we can get $3 million. Again, they hire an economist, not a scientist, not a doctor, not somebody with a medical degree, not someone who gives a fuck about you, the American consumer. They hire an economist
Basically a banker.
to see how much they can tax a product without destroying completely the segment, so they can continue to pull that money in over and over again. So they hire an economist. The economist says, we believe $3 million is the number. So they start with 12%. I'm sorry. They start at 20%, and it gets negotiated down to 12%. And on the couple of weeks before that tax went in, David Garofalo from Two Guys Smoke Shop was on the courthouse steps in the Senate steps in Massachusetts, fighting to make it not happen, to make the tax not happen, arguing with them. I'll close my stores down, making a bunch of idle threats. Well, he comes out, and the Boston Globe is there. They must have had a slow news cycle. They put the microphone in his face and they go, what's going on? And he's like, and they're going to tax cigars. And if they do, I'm closing all 3 of my stores and I'm moving over the border to New Hampshire. Well, the next day, David Garofalo gets printed above the fold on the front page of the Boston Globe. To get that kind of press, you would have to kill someone in cold blood. He gets printed above the fold on the Boston Globe. Garofalo to leave the state of Massachusetts over cigar tax. His foot is in his mouth. They negotiate that 20% tax down to 12%. But this is the thing. This is why he had to leave, not because he said it, because he would have done it because he said it. It's a floor tax. So instead of him paying himself an exorbitant amount of money, he takes that money and he buys inventory. So when a customer walks in and says, I'd like 4 Padron number 4 Maduro, I have it in my humidor in the Salem store. So he could pay himself or he could buy inventory. He has always bought inventory, and that's the secret of our success. So he has, $2 million in inventory, and they're going to hit that with a 12% tax. The tax bill is $150,000. He makes $30,000 a year. How could his tax bill be $150,000 when he makes $30,000 a year? And this is in the 90s.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a decent salary for a business owner in the 90s.
Yeah.
And this is, so he had to close the store because he didn't have $150,000 to
Massachusetts pushed him right out.
Pushed him out.
And in Massachusetts right now, I know when I was working for Harvard, I would stop in a cigar shop down in the square, and whatever that price was, and they didn't want to advertise the tax price. Like, you guys advertise your price and that's it. When you get to the register, that's it. They would put their price up, which was comparable to your price. But then when you got to the register, it was like 25% higher because they had an excise tax, and then they had the 6.5% Massachusetts sales tax.
And it's double taxation, as far as I understand. They charge you the 40% tax, and then they multiply that by 6.25, which is the sales tax. So you're taxing a tax. So in order for Massachusetts to sell a cigar, I can sell it in my store in New Hampshire cheaper than they can buy it.
Okay.
Because of that tax. And that tax structure.
And that's why I see some guys coming up and buying boxes and boxes and boxes. And
there's no coincidence we're on the border.
You see a lot of, Eric, if you go into the store at certain times of day, a lot of, let's call it what it is, an Indian store owners coming in and buying friggin' boxes of cigars. And they'll do the same thing in the liquor stores here too. And I remember when I was in school, going to UNH, I was taking a food and beverage class. And the beverage part of it was about some of the laws of beverage, and we got into the New Hampshire stuff. And our professor, or teacher, or whoever it was, I wouldn't call it a professor, it wasn't really one of those programs where you have a professor, but a guy that was in the business and was like, I'm going to go and teach this stuff, said, watch, when you go to the liquor store at the Rotary in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, take a look over at the hotel across the way. I think there's like a Common Man Diner or something like that across the way. You'll see ATF or Liquor Commission people over there with binoculars watching the liquor store, because if you take more than 5 gallons over the border into Massachusetts, you get busted. You can't. Kidding. Yeah. And I'm sure something like that exists with cigars. Maybe not. Who knows? I don't know.
How about this?
Talking out of my ass, so.
How about this? Leave us the fuck alone.
Bingo.
I'll buy however many fucking bottles I want.
Yep.
And I will move them to where I want. I will buy them for the lowest price based on the state that charges the cheapest tax, and fuck you.
Yeah, but you cross their imaginary line in the sand, Jonathan, and that breaks the law.
I've been pushing for the last month, and I mean absolutely pushing as hard as I can. I stopped wearing my Lions Not Cheap hat. I stopped wearing my I Love Haters hat. Those are my Karen repellents, and I started welcoming people to say something to me about my mask with my energy, just pulling it in.
Or lack of mask.
Correct. Yeah, I'm not wearing one.
Yeah, he's a pro-facer. I'm not calling him anti-mask.
That's a
great
pro-facer.
Anti-pro-facer or pro-facer. Yeah.
Today, when we're recording,
Yep.
the governor of New Hampshire dropped the mask mandate.
Yep.
Today is when that went into effect.
That was so nice of him to let us not wear masks anymore.
Right.
And then May 7th is 100%.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, you can take the partitions down in restaurants and everything.
So you can stop abiding by an illegal edict by a governor who didn't have the balls to put it through his own Congress, and the Congress wouldn't have voted for it anyways, because they would have all been voted out. But I digress. So today was the closest day that I got to getting arrested.
Oh, don't you tell us the story? Come on.
It really is.
How do we not lead off with this?
I blew this up way bigger than it really is. 2 people today in the same store that worked for the store told me I should have a mask on. Other than that, not one fucking person has ever said anything to me, ever.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because I look like a serial killer. Maybe it's because my beard is pointed like Conor McGregor's.
You got a little Breaking Bad look to you.
A little something.
Head.
Yeah, I mean, I can handle my own and I can take a punch, but I've been trying to get arrested for this so that I can be the guy who takes it to the Supreme Court, and no one will even ask me to put one on. So I go on a Tinder date the other day, and I went to a shitty dive bar, and we're going to walk in the restaurant, and she's like, "Oh, I forgot my mask." And I'm rolling my eyes like, oh, great, I'm friggin' on a date with a masker. So she gets the mask. Yeah, she's anti-facer. She's pretty. She's got a nice dumper. So whatever, maybe I'll get lucky. And we go to walk in the restaurant, and she just stops dead. Just this paralyzed look of fear on her face as she's looking at me, realizing I haven't covered my face in any way. And she goes, "You're not going to put a mask on?" And I said, "No, I'm not. If that bothers you, I guess I'll eat by myself tonight." And she said, what, almost like your funeral type of shit. And we go and walk to the table, and the restaurant owner comes out and says, "Hey, if you're going to walk around, do me a favor, put a mask on." And I said, "Yeah, that's fine. I just am not going to do it because the government told me to, but you're the owner. I'll abide by your rules in your restaurant. That's how you want me to do it." And the girl was looking at me a little funny, and I broke down for her all of the reasons why the governor's mandate is it's unconstitutional, is what it is. He's not a king. You can't make an edict as a governor. So you just gotta do the right thing. And that's the reason why I'm against it.
So I follow this guy, his name is Legal Man. Everybody needs to check out his podcast. He's a lawyer. He doesn't go by his name, he goes by Legal Man. That's what he calls himself.
Nice.
And he's a
real lawyer then.
He's a friggin' constitutional expert. And he was saying that when you take a look at the Constitution, there's nothing in there about anybody being able to call any kind of state of emergency. That's a bunch of bullshit. And right now, it is not about an emergency. It's not about a virus. It's not about a pandemic. It's about compliance. And everybody is afraid because everybody needs the government to tell them what to do.
I cannot believe the level of compliance that they got in this mask thing.
It's unreal.
So easily too.
It's
so
unreal.
easily.
Yep. Where I work, and I won't spill. I don't spill the beans about where I work on the podcast.
Thanks for blowing up my spot, you fucking jerk.
We're just trying to bring some business your way.
I appreciate that.
So a guy I work with had his mask on, and sometimes he has to pull it down below his nose because his glasses fog up when he wears it.
Right.
And we gotta wear it because we're working in a place that not only does the company that we work for say, "Hey, put your friggin' mask on," but the people that contract us out say it too. And one of the people that is associated with the people who contract us out sends an email to one of the top bosses saying this person's mask was below their nose. Oh my fucking head. It's ridiculous.
Whatever happened?
We've all gone back.
They're riding on each other.
Look at across the street from the shop, right? You got T-Bone's restaurant setting up a tent that is completely enclosed in, so it's okay for us to eat outside, but inside.
But enclosed, yeah.
Well, it's not made of plywood.
And for the record, I've walked into T-Bones no less than 30 times since the pandemic with no mask on, and no one says shit. Yeah. So, again, it's the government should never have been shut down over something that makes you sick. It is a real virus. People have died. The numbers have been inflated. The number of times
the median age is 80, dude.
Not only that.
They were going to die anyway, and they weren't going to die from COVID.
Correct.
They were going to die from whatever underlying, what do they call it? Shit. I'll remember the word. There's a word for it. Comorbidity.
Yep.
They were going to die from whatever the comorbidity was.
When you get tested for COVID-19 and you get tested positive with a quick test, of course they order the blood test, and then you get tested for that. Now, at no point does this get entered into a database with your tied to your social security number or tied to your first, middle, and last name. So now you have entered 2 ticks. You have doubled the number of positive results across the world because quick test, blood test. Now, a week later, they do a 3rd test to see if the blood test was a false positive. The 3rd test now triples the amount of cases in the world. Mm-hmm. Multiply that by, I have a friend that had it, and he suffered greatly for 10 days, and he came out of it, got his sense of smell back, his sense of taste back. During his 10-day stint, and over the course of 2 weeks, he tested positive 8 times.
So that's
one person
positive case.
8 times.
Now do that times everybody that else has had.
Only 2 at the end did he test negative for actually having it in him, and then he's testing positive for the antibodies, which I'm not convinced a positive antibody test doesn't count as a tick.
All the tests are fucked up. Your rapid test is fucked up, right? People are going and getting the rapid test and it's coming back positive. Yeah. The PCR test, apparently, and I haven't dug into this, but I've heard some reputable sources that I listen to on a regular basis talk about this. The PCR test, the guy that invented the PCR test said this should never have been used for COVID. How has all this COVID bullshit affected the cigar industry? That's going to be a clench on it too.
I would like to plead the 5th on the grounds that this information could incriminate me. Okay. The cigar industry has boomed.
Really?
We're in a boom that is rivaling the mid-90s.
Really?
Because people are just sitting at home, just want to sit around and smoke, get some stress off.
There's nothing left to fucking do.
I was so happy that you guys didn't have to change any structure on the inside. You had the
curbside. By governor's edict, we did have to, but we just didn't do it.
Good. No mask. It's like the last free place in town that you can go to. Yeah.
Yeah, no mask.
Walk no mask. You actually look at people with masks funny when you go in there.
Yeah, they feel out of place, not the other way around. Yeah. They feel out of place. So I was given the offer when all this mask bullshit happened and we were reopening and, what do you want to do? It's your store, what do you want to do? And I said, I'm not wearing a mask. Mm-hmm. If you would like me to wear a mask, you have to tell me I have to. And no one was willing to tell me that I had to, so I just don't wear it. And my staff, some of them were on the other side, and I won them over just because, look at me, I'm wearing my glasses, they're not fogging up, I'm walking around without it.
I'm not getting COVID.
What are you going to do?
I'm still alive.
Yeah. Are you going to pull the mask down, take a draw, put the mask back up after you...
I did experiment with trying to smoke a cigar while wearing a mask just to say that I did it.
I bet the smoke went everywhere. Guess what? Your breath goes everywhere, just like that.
They did test with using this.
Yeah.
And then it would just come out everywhere.
For those of you listening to the podcast and not watching, he held up his vape unit.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So Jonathan is a professional podcaster.
That is true.
He's been doing it for many years. Let's talk about
12 years, yeah.
So there's a podcast studio that we would never be able to afford unless we really friggin' blew
it's
up.
Not that bad.
Big.
It's not that bad.
It's
but what I'll say is...
It's more than I'm willing to pay right now.
Yeah.
When I would say 13 years ago, 12 years ago, I was doing... I'm a disc jockey by trade. So I'm messing around in my basement. I got a bunch of vinyl records. I got DJ friends coming over, and I have a backup system that is nothing but vinyl. and you could plug your laptop into one part of it if you wanted to play MP3s or whatever, but for the most part, we're playing on vinyl. And we're mixing until 3 a.m. because I'm a DJ. I don't have to go to bed. I don't have to get up in the morning. You know, my work is at night. So we are just making mashups live and laughing and drinking wine and just fucking around. And I call up my web developer and I said, listen, I need to find a way to get this on my website to stream it like a TV show. So we researched it, and at the time, Ustream was it was popular.
That's pre-YouTube, right?
This is right around, YouTube existed, but you couldn't stream on YouTube. You had to have the video already cut and edited. So we figure out the back then you had to do embed codes, and it was a very complex system of coding that I had to learn how to do. And I would do this show called Webcast Wednesdays. Well, the very first show I send out to everybody on my AOL account, because my web guy either I didn't pay him right, or he didn't figure out how to make my email work where I could send emails from my website. I forget exactly how that played out, but from my AOL account, every contact, I sent out a notice and said, Webcast Wednesday is coming to a computer near you. And I had 60 people watching the first episode. This is almost 13 years ago. And I had DJ Midas, who is a big time DJ.
I know him. Yeah, John Manning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's a big DJ here in the Manchester area.
Back in the mid-90s, late 90s, I was at Boom till friggin' 6 o'clock in the morning.
And he'd be the headliner. He was just a killer.
Yeah. He was one of the residents there. Yeah, that was a good time.
He was my first real guest, and what an honor to have him on. Phenomenal DJ, played a house set. Well, one of the first people that watched the show is Dave Garofalo. And he sends me an email that Friday. That happened on Wednesday. He sends me an email Friday. I caught your show. Very interesting. Can we do this with cigars? And I said, yeah. If I can do it with playing records. I mean, I'm not, with licensed music, you got problems. So playing licensed music, I was waiting for them to just shut me down or fine me. And I'd pay it and then turn that into a media circus. That's who I am. So to do it on cigars, are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, I'm in. I'm thinking I'm going to get a couple free cigars out of the deal, and I'll have to set up some equipment. Well, I sit down and meet with him, and he's like, yeah, everybody has their own microphone, and during the break, we can talk to each other through our headsets, and no one can hear us. And then he's got this whole elaborate plan of shit that doesn't exist. When he said it to me, in order to do it, you would have to go to like Berkeley and learn how to be a sound engineer and set up a fucking board. But I had enough equipment at home, I was able to fuck around with it and figure out signal paths. And it's why when you were mentioning you were doing the podcast, I can do the studio stuff, we've been doing that for years, but I can do the guerrilla shit because this is how we started.
Yeah.
Just a basic mixer. So I get it all set up. We do a couple of test things, and I ended up with the first person I end up in my phone in the cigar industry is Nick Perdomo, because he was the first guest. So very long story short, we start doing this, and he never quits and just keeps pushing the envelope, pushing the content. Dave, yeah. I went from being a producer to being what they call second chair. So that would be in this podcast, mostly Eric. So color commentary bouncing back and forth. And probably the most important role in a podcast is that being able to make that lubrication happen so that there's no dead air.
We make lubrication.
Well, you also post edit, which is cheating. But
post edit. What does that mean?
You go in and after the podcast is recorded, you edit. You don't
edit shit. This is it, man.
Oh, you just cut the small little loop at the beginning.
What I do is I'll take this audio and I'll put it into. I'll keep it in GarageBand. I have the song that we did, the intro, and I put that in the beginning. And then we record something on the iPhone, and I'll stick that in the beginning, and then that's it. I convert it to an MP3. I convert it to an MP4 from the video. And
Now you got us offended.
You're much better than I thought you were. I'm so sorry. I did not mean to offend.
I wouldn't even know where to begin editing. You didn't offend me. I'm confused. I'm like, editing? What's that? That's too much time. I got 2 kids. I gotta smoke cigars.
So the very long story short, now it's a revenue stream of 6 figures. Every major manufacturer advertises on the show.
It's crazy, man.
60,000 downloads.
Studio 21 is the name of it. So what do you? So let's pump some of these podcasts that you guys got on there.
Oh God.
You got yours, Cigar Authority. Let's talk about that first. Cigar Authority.
Cigar
So that's
Authority
you and
is-
Dave.
Yeah, it's a bunch of dick and fart jokes and cigar knowledge.
It's pretty fucking awesome, man.
Yeah.
It's a great show.
And it's something, because I take everything that I do seriously, and he does as well, and we are around each other all the time. I just realized early on that I didn't know him well enough, because your podcast is really, people listen to hear the talent on the podcast, not to hear the guest. So no one's tuning into your show because I'm kicked off Facebook. I'm kicked off Instagram. Lifetime ban?
Lifetime ban.
Oh, fuck yeah.
I gotta get up there. Well, the only claim to fame of getting kicked off Facebook I have is the Salem politics page.
You're the odd man out. You get a
I know I am. I'm the odd man out.
I've never in my life thought I'd be the odd man out.
Yeah.
I never thought I'd be one of the cool kids getting kicked off Facebook, and then you'd be the odd man out.
It's a badge of honor these days, I guess. I gotta get my badge. Fuck. I'm gonna start shitposting. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's good. So he and I, mostly me to him, can finish each other's sentences and just know the direction of where the show is going. And that level of camaraderie and that level of being in sync is something that you just can't buy. So it makes it so that we can talk for 2 hours every week for 12 years about cigars. And 5% of our audience doesn't even smoke cigars. They listen for the banter. Mm-hmm. Dick and fart jokes. That's where it's
That's
at.
the best thing about the podcast is the banter. Cigar Authority, right? The banter. Joe Rogan's podcast,
Banter.
The banter. It's incredible, and that's what people really tune in for. So you got the Cigar Authority. That's probably what the flagship show on at the Studio 21.
Most downloads and also most revenue.
Now, what I think is cool too is you got this other show, or not you, but these other people have this show on there called the Hash Bubbles.
Yeah.
That's another cigar show, and it's just like the podcast industry that we're in. There's
You have more than one podcast at this place.
Oh yeah.
Oh, all right.
Dude, you should see it. You walk up the stairs, right, and it's a stage, and the stage has this lit up booth, and they sit behind it like they're fucking anchormen. News
Same company that
like,
did Fox News's big and ESPN's big desks.
Oh, really?
Same desk,
he
yeah.
sits up there like he's fucking Ron Burgundy, cigar. And then they have another
gotta check this
studio.
out.
They have another studio off to the side that's just audio,
Just
right?
audio. It's audio and video. It's just a different. The main focus in that room is audio.
Audio, okay. And then they have chairs, and they have a coffee shop that they can't find a fucking barista for because everyone's collecting $700 a month from the government, and they don't want to
Good
work.
job, Eric.
No.
You want to be a barista at a cigar shop? They'll pay you in cigars. Actually, you probably couldn't even do that, could
Maybe
you?
that's tempting.
No, you can't. It's illegal. You can't give away cigars.
Get him back.
Really?
Okay, so you got the. Let's finish up with the podcast, and then I want to talk to you about something else with the point system that you guys got at the shop.
So we have Cigar Authority. We have the Ashholes, which was named after a cigar game I created called Ashhole, which is based off of cornhole, which you can already guess is you throwing your ash from your cigar into this board, trying to score it into the hole. And I did it as a joke, and I made 50 of them, printed stickers with the instructions. And my thought was this was gonna take off, and I was gonna sell them. And it ends up spawning a podcast. And whatever.
Did you sell the 50 though?
No, I still have probably 48 of them. I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, so
Thanks.
we've got another podcast on there called African Diaspora Connects, which is a group of Kenyans.
That's the African dudes that are always down there. Those guys are pretty freaking funny,
They're
man,
awesome.
when they get together.
They're awesome.
I can't tell if they're gonna start talking in English or whatever language they talk.
They go from English to Swahili and back and
they
forth.
do a mix. That's crazy.
They also do a Scotch night, which is pretty cool. They'll come up and they'll spend about $30 each on cigars, and then I give them the room upstairs, and I'll sit with them and talk about the flavor notes on the cigars.
That's not a podcast, though?
That's not a podcast.
Oh, you should turn that into
That
a
would
podcast.
be a good one. It would be a good.
That would be
it's
a
too
really
many-
good podcast.
it's
I'll go
a-
up there with my laptop and we'll do it.
I think there's entirely, it's too much of white people and black people getting along for the
you know,
mainstream
yeah.
media
Yeah.
to be able to stomach it. And
That'll get shut down.
I would say half of them are anti-Trumpers, and they still get along. Not only with the other half, but they get along with me. So all the bullshit about racially divided country and all that shit, really the thing is, if you can think clearly and think soundly as a person, and you believe what you believe, you can also believe that someone else can believe what they believe, and that's okay. And this is where we have conversations where we do not agree politically, and at the end, it's a big hug, it's a handshake, it's eye contact.
Me and Eric will go up there and teach them all how it's all bullshit, and they're all on the same team, and we'll really friggin' blow their minds.
These guys all believe that we're all on the same team as far as from a humanitarian standpoint. Another podcast is the Quirky Dog, which is about dog training.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, I gotta look up that one.
Tom Duggan
Yep.
is there. He does paying attention. It's mostly Methuen politics.
Methuen is a town in Massachusetts, just south of us in Salem.
Right. For
And
all
then
you people that are
barbecue,
listening.
you got a barbecue one.
Pit Like Barbecue is there.
And how about
What is
Tommy
that
Grill?
one? They do like smoke
They
recipes?
do a lot of smoking, not so much recipes. They mostly talk to other barbecuers, and they talk about the competition circuit and recipe ideas more than giving up, because barbecue guys are so secretive.
Yeah.
But
But like tricks and stuff. that
tricks
they-
of the trade.
Yeah.
Is it open up there to watch that one?
Always.
I'd love to come up and
Yeah.
see that one.
Always. You'll be disappointed, but it's
Oh,
always
really?
open.
Okay.
You-
Maybe
you-
I won't then.
Well, you'll be they're entertaining, but you'll be disappointed in that you're going up there looking for the next big trick.
No, I know all the tricks.
All right, I'm looking for the next
Oh,
big
you're
trick.
so humble.
And my name's not Chef Mr. Jonathan, it's just Mr. Jonathan.
I'm on my second 8% beer, so yeah, I'm
So,
miles away.
Yeah, I love their energy. I love their dynamic. I just wish that they gave a little bit more up as far as the recipe side of things, or a trick here or there, because that's why people listen to the Cigar Authority. It's not all cigars, but every show you're going to learn a little something, or a tweak on something. And I just wish their show had a little more learning on it. But they have huge listenership. So I'm not complaining.
Now, does Tommy Grella do a show still there?
He did while season go on. He's now
Yeah.
living in Washington State.
Oh, really? Oh, no kidding. We have a mutual friend, and I remember him from Food Network, and he tried out for the next
America's Next Food Star.
Yeah,
which Dave got him on that show. Dave was the guy behind the camera writing the script.
No kidding.
You guys know the guy from Boston?
Yes.
Early YouTube sensation.
Yes.
That was Dave as well. He
No
wrote
kidding.
the script for that.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So
They let the dog out.
So you can go up there and you can watch any of those shows
Any
as
of the
they're going on.
shows,
And the guys that do the shows are cool with it?
Oh yeah.
Now what happens, like what's the package? So you've explained this to me before, but I want to put it out there in the podcast world, because there may be somebody locally listening that wants to put a podcast together and would go and see you and see what the package is. So you guys have the space, you get up there, you have somebody on site that hits record, right?
There's a million tricks, and yes, as far as getting it recorded, that's kind of boilerplate stuff. Almost anybody can record their podcast. However,
Obviously.
the being able to get the levels correct, for example. So if you're listening to a podcast and the guest shifts off the mic like this and then brings their voice back, you just heard my voice drop. Everyone in the room didn't. So on post-production, that needs to be cleaned up. Now you can go into that exact piece of audio and you can change that piece of audio, or you can learn some things about audio bundle software, which will scan the entire file and then bring it to the level it needs to be. It's just expensive. Mm-hmm. So there's also tricks as far as YouTube. Why do the most popular videos have faces on the thumbnail? Why are the words a certain font, and why are they a certain color? What is the font? What is the color? What is the difference between the JPEG on the video and the title of the show? Why are they similar but not always the same? And these are tricks to boost anybody's show. If the content is halfway decent, we know every single backdoor trick, and anything that we don't know, we're constantly learning.
Yeah.
So it's $2,000 as a buy-in initially for 10 podcasts, and then $200 a podcast after that. But it's You walk in, you don't set up your equipment because time's money.
Right.
You walk in with your show, you do your show, you leave. By the time you get to where you're going, the show has been edited, uploaded, tagged, and is ready to go because the producer operates it like a TV show. The intro gets played and recorded. The outro is played and recorded. The guts in the middle, commercials get played. Sure, there's some fuck ups in there, here and there, but by and large, people like to live behind the curtain. So nobody wants a completely professional sounding podcast. Mm-hmm. They want something, show me your warts type of thing.
That's my thing, man. That's what I love doing with this. So like when I go in and I put the intro song in, I'll have the intro song overlap a little bit with the beginning, so it kind of goes into it, and it's just I like the raw format, just the conversation everywhere. Just I want it to be friends hanging out.
Yeah,
and that's what I always envision this podcast to be. And I've said this before on the show, we never even met in person until the first day we recorded an episode for this show.
No shit.
The pilot episode was the first time we ever met in person. We never even spoke. We only texted through Facebook Messenger. Then he was getting in so much trouble on Facebook that I'm like, dude, give me your cell phone number. Because I think you're going to get thrown off Facebook, and that means you're not going to have Messenger. So you don't have Messenger anymore, huh?
I got nothing.
So
congratulations.
I got Instagram, and I got
and that's Facebook.
Yeah, I was
Snapchat, and something.
just so you know, Eric, I was kicked off that one too.
With what?
Instagram, lifetime ban.
Well, you can't put news up on Instagram.
What you guys need to do
TikToks.
is start the Tinder for podcasters, so that and you guys can tell your story right at the beginning where you met through social media, and this could be a way that podcasters could get together and do podcasts on like-minded topics.
That is a good idea.
Instead of swiping left or right,
like that out there?
you touch the microphone if you would like to podcast with someone based on their bio, and then I don't know what the other thing would be.
You're giving away $1 million idea here now that...
Yeah, I don't want to do it, but
okay.
I'd be happy to see it.
Well, now that it's recorded on April 16th at 7:56, you've got...
I guess I do have a timestamp, right?
You've got full rights to it, absolutely, at 1:04 in this podcast.
Yeah.
Fuck, awesome, man.
Wouldn't that be sick?
But it would be a good idea because then, no matter what, if you had cigars, then it's like, okay, these are all the people that want to do cigars.
Right.
And you just have endless amounts of people that could come on.
And there's a lot of cigar podcasts out there, too.
Yeah, there's about 30 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of them are. We own the two top ones.
Okay.
Cigar Authority and the Ashholes are the top two. You got Cigar Coop out there, which he does a good show if you're into just information. You don't want to be entertained in any way whatsoever. You just want the Bible of cigars. He'll take you to a legitimate cigar Catholic church meeting, and 3.5 hours. His stuff is accurate. It's just slow, monotonous.
You have to really enjoy cigars to like his podcast. You're not going to be like, okay, this is the first podcast.
You have to really enjoy Catholic Church.
So
you have to like it so much that you would do 3.5 of them in a row. Like just church hop, like people bar hop, and just catch sermon after sermon after sermon.
That's what it is. They're sermons. Cigar sermons.
They're sermons. Yeah, that's good.
I wanted to ask you before we wrap this up about the point program that you have.
Yeah.
And I remember when the point program changed. What happened there?
Is this the two guys?
Two guys. So they have a point program.
Every dollar you spend is a point.
Is a point.
And then you cash your points in just like tickets at Chuck E. Cheese. And we used to be able to give away free boxes of cigars on your points.
And I loved it.
And
Free cigars.
this
How many points was that?
Depends on the cigars,
Yeah.
For 100.
Like roughly.
After you spent, say, $200, you got a free bundle of Dos Hombre.
So it'd be like $50 or something, right?
Yeah.
That's not bad.
$50.
That's a really good deal.
$200.
Yeah.
25% kickback.
And now the only free stuff you can get is beef jerky, which is the best beef jerky I've ever
It
had.
is a good beef jerky, but you can get lighters, cutters free. But all the cigar stuff, we had to cut the point values in half and do them for half price. I'm sorry, it was 400 points. That's what it was. It was 400 points. You can get a bundle for free, and now it's at 200 points. You get 50% off a bundle. And this is because the FDA stepped in and said that there must be a qualifying purchase for products to be given away for free. And in talking to 3 different lawyers, there was not enough guidance to know whether or not we were setting ourselves up for failure with respect to the FDA, who is not an elected body. So they can act, although they don't, but they can act swiftly and ruthlessly when they are issuing a punishment. And it is final. There is no, we're going to take this up to the board and take a look at it. No, if they tell you you owe $100,000, you owe $100,000.
Yeah. It's like the IRS.
Correct.
It's an NGO, just like OSHA, just like the CDC. You know?
But you have to, so you were saying that the points, you had to buy something, right?
Over
so what
time.
if you just said, okay, well, you're going to get this bundle with 200 points plus a penny. So you're paying a penny for the bundle. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, then you end up in it becomes does the value proposition of that transaction make sense for the business? So, or is the business operating a loss leader, and you can't do loss leaders with tobacco?
Either way.
I can do this all day.
No matter what
I
you
can do
lose.
this all day. I've tried. And listen,
Fucking government.
I love that you
Great.
made the attempt to do something that 3 lawyers cost the company $10,000 just in retainer fees. They couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure it out. The owner of Tubas couldn't figure it out. And he moved his company from Massachusetts to New Hampshire. And none of us. We did everything we could. We threw as much mud against the wall as we could.
And it's not New Hampshire, it's the feds swooping
It's
in.
the feds. And listen, I said, fuck it. Let's do it and see what they say. And Dave was like, yeah, how many times am I going to pay whatever the fee is? Because it could be 10,000, 100,000. It could be $1 million. Like, where's the...
There's no definitive answer.
There's no answer. They decide what they're going to do, and they don't have to answer to anybody. It's not the Congress where they have to vote, and you got a shot of being able to go in and meet with someone and say, all right, this is what makes sense, and get them to vote on your side. This is a governing body that does not report to voters. They were assigned their position based on blowjobs that they either gave or received.
So now you said in New Hampshire there's no tax on cigars?
There is no sales tax on premium cigars.
No, and the only state in the country that's like that, right?
It's the only state that separates premium cigars from other tobacco products.
Now, do you think New Hampshire would ever join every other state? Or are they pretty stern on keeping it that way?
New Hampshire does, for the most part, operate on their state motto, live free or die. They don't do everything that I would like, but...
Stop beating them up.
For the most part, the state is proud of the fact that we are first in the nation to vote. We are first in the nation when it came to separating cigars out. That you can, there's a lot of representatives, but you can just go to Concord and meet with people if you want as a regular person. New Hampshire is proud of that small state mentality. That doesn't mean that they always make the right decision, but I think that we're okay, at least in the short term. Sununu is pretty pro-cigar. I have not always liked everything that he has said or done as governor, but compared to the direction that it could have gone,
Yeah, Feltus was a flat out communist.
it could have gone worse. I mean, it could have been better, but it definitely could have been worse.
Yeah. Awesome. I think I don't want to keep you any longer because I know you got to get to your Australian podcast.
Yeah,
So how's that? Wait, real quick. Wait, you're going to be
I
on an
gotta do a
Australians
Zoom
podcast?
Yeah, I got to do a Zoom call, and there's a podcast in Australia, and I don't even know the name of it. I'd plug it, but I have no idea what it is. It's just listeners of the Cigar Authority that do one, and they said, "Can you be on?" And I typically don't say no.
Really? I appreciate you coming here.
Since I took my nap today,
Dude, you are a wealth of knowledge. I've never seen anybody that can shoot the shit with an old lady, a young guy in his like late 20s, an old crabby fart in the back room of the cigar shop, bitching about who knows what, and you're an incredible man, and I'm happy to know that you're my friend, man. And
Appreciate that.
I've just enjoyed getting to know you over the years, and since this last year, I've gotten to know you a little better, and we've done some food stuff together, and I'm happy to call you a friend, man. Thank you for coming on and sharing your knowledge, and yeah, man, this was great. I appreciate it.
Are you working tomorrow?
I am working
Yes,
tomorrow.
I
Maybe
might
I'm
be there.
gonna stop in.
I might be there at some
should.
point.
Alright,
Let's plan something.
let's go.
Yeah, my wife's going out to watch, fucking A, I'm embarrassed to even fucking say this, but Prince Philip, who recently passed away,
Nice.
before he comes back as a virus to wipe out half the planet because of overpopulation, because that was his wish in 1988, she's gonna go and get together with a couple of her friends for some brunch and watch the funeral.
You guys have,
I'm gonna be stuck with the
imagine that,
kids, but
Jeff.
as soon as I can get rid of the kids, man, I'm grabbing my Padron 1926 #1, and I'm coming to hang out.
That's the one I'll try.
do you
All
guys
right.
ever do recorded drops or anything? You need me to say this is the Resistance Chronicle with Eric and Matt?
What does that mean?
Like later on down the road when you maybe go to commercial break or whatever, when you come back, you hear on the radio, they'll play the drops. You know, this
Oh.
is so and so.
Oh, that would be so
that
cool.
heavy
listening to.
That would be awesome. yeah, we need that.
All right, I'll do it right now. You're listening to. It's all right. We can keep rolling. You're listening to the Resistance Chronicle with Eric and Matt. I was going to say something funny, but I didn't have anything to say.
That's all right.
If you like listening to two dudes with their heads so far up their ass they don't have to take the butcher's word for it, you want the Resistance Chronicle.
I am the butcher. Jonathan, thank you for coming on, man. This
You're
was
welcome.
awesome.
Anytime.
And we're out.
And my dad's a mailman.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.